Sarah stared at the for sale sign planted in her bedroom floor like a dagger through her heart. The fresh paint on her walls, still wet where her parents had covered up 17 years of memories without even telling her, through the window. She could see her mother cheerfully leading a young couple through their garden tour, pointing out all the ways they could modernize the very home where Sarah still lived, still breathed, still existed, at least for now. At her feet, Max, her golden retriever, pressed his warm body against her legs, a silent guardian who somehow understood the weight of this betrayal. What no one knew then was that this moment would unravel a web of lies so deep it would shake an entire community and prove that sometimes the truest form of love comes from the most unexpected guardian, one with 4 paws and unwavering loyalty. If you, like us, believe in stories of courage, justice, and unconditional love, please subscribe to our channel now so you don't miss any heartwarming tales. Thank you. The sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway, and Sarah quickly wiped away her tears. She'd learned long ago that showing emotion in this house was like showing weakness to wolves. Max's tail stopped wagging as he positioned himself between her and the door, a habit he developed over the past few months as if he could sense the growing tension in the house. "And this is the largest bedroom," her mother's voice carried through the door, that artificial cheerfulness that Sarah had come to dread. "It just needs a little updating, but look at all this natural light." The door swung open without warning. Sarah stood frozen in place, her heart pounding as the young couple stepped into her room, their eyes sliding past her as if she were invisible. Her mother, dressed in her real estate showing outfit, pearls and all, didn't even acknowledge her presence. "The previous owner's daughter used this as her room," her mother said, and Sarah felt her stomach drop at the use of past tense. "But, as you can see, it has excellent potential as a home office or nursery. Previous owner's daughter." The words echoed in Sarah's mind as she watched the couple nod appreciatively, discussing where they might put a crib. Her AP history textbook sat open on her desk, her half-finished essay still glowing on her laptop screen. The coffee she'd made just an hour ago was still steaming beside it. Max let out a low growl, and for once Sarah didn't quiet him. The couple startled, finally seeming to notice the teenage girl and her dog standing in the corner of what was supposedly an empty room. "Oh!" The woman jumped slightly. "I'm sorry, we thought—" "Sarah, dear." Her mother's voice turned sharp, though her smile remained plastered on. "Why don't you take Max for a walk? It's such a lovely day outside." It wasn't a suggestion. Sarah grabbed Max's leash from its hook, one of the few things left on her walls, and clipped it to his collar. As she led him out, she heard her mother's smooth recovery. "Teenagers, you know, but don't worry. Everything will be cleared out well." Before closing, cleared out. Like furniture, like trash, like 17 years of existence. The autumn air bit at Sarah's cheeks as she walked Max around the neighborhood, their familiar route now feeling like a countdown to goodbye. Every house, every tree, every crack in the sidewalk she'd memorized over the years seemed to mock her. With their permanence, they would stay. She would go. Max stopped suddenly, his ears perking up at a sound Sarah couldn't hear. He gently tugged her toward their neighbor Mrs. Henderson's house, where the elderly woman was struggling with some grocery bags. "Let me help you with those," Sarah called out, jogging over. Mrs. Henderson had been their neighbor for as long as Sarah could remember, always with a cookie and a kind word ready. "Oh, Sarah dear, thank you." Mrs. Henderson smiled warmly. "And hello to you too, Max." The dog wagged his tail, accepting a gentle pat. "I was so surprised to see the sign go up yesterday. Your mother hadn't mentioned anything about moving." Sarah's hands trembled as she carried the bags inside. "That makes 2 of us," she muttered. Mrs. Henderson paused in her kitchen, studying Sarah's face. "What do you mean, dear?" The weight of everything crashed down at once. Before Sarah could stop herself, tears spilled over. I didn't know either. They didn't tell me. I just came home from school yesterday and found them painting over my walls. They're already showing the house and Mom's talking about me in past tense and—" She broke off, trying to catch her breath. Max pressed against her legs, and Mrs. Henderson guided her to sit at the kitchen table. "Here, let me make you some tea." The older woman moved efficiently around her kitchen, her face grave. "And your brother? Is he coming back from college to help with the move?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "Jason? No, he's too busy with his fancy new life at Yale. Besides, they're not selling his room, just mine." She wiped her eyes. Did you know they converted his room into a memorial to his high school achievements the day he left? Meanwhile, they're painting over my debate team certificates while I'm still living there. Mrs. Henderson set a steaming mug in front of Sarah, then sat down across from her. Sarah, listen to me. Something's not right here. Have you talked to your Aunt Claire recently? The mention of her aunt made Sarah sit up straighter. Aunt Claire, her mother's younger sister, had always been different from the rest of the family, more genuine. But she'd stopped visiting too, years ago after a huge fight with Sarah's parents. Not since she left. Mum blocked her number on my phone. Mrs. Henderson's lips tightened. I think it's time you and I had a serious talk about what happened that Christmas. Your aunt tried to tell me something back then, but I didn't understand the full picture until now. As the afternoon light faded outside, Sarah listened, her tea growing cold, as Mrs. Henderson revealed a story about financial manipulation, hidden accounts, and a trust fund that should have been Sarah's. Max lay at her feet, his warm presence, anchoring her as her world tilted on its axis. What Mrs. Henderson couldn't know, was that her words were planting the first seeds of Sarah's escape plan. Back in her room that evening, Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard. The house listing had already gone live. Her mother never wasted time. There it was, 456 Maple Street, listed at a price that made her eyes widen. The photos had been taken while she was at school. Her room looked empty, sterile, nothing like the lived-in space she was sitting in now. But it wasn't the photos that made her blood run cold. It was the listing description: newly renovated 4-bedroom home, perfect for a growing family. Master suite plus 3 additional bedrooms, 1 currently configured as a trophy room, 2 ready for immediate renovation, 2 ready for renovation. Not 1. They weren't just selling her room, they were selling the guest room too. The guest room where Aunt Claire always stayed. Max whined softly, nudging her hand away from the mouse. Sarah switched tabs, her hands shaking as she pulled up her parents' real estate agent's website. There, buried in the sold listings from 2 years ago, she found what she was looking for. Another house, in another town, purchased under her parents' names. They've been planning this, she whispered to Max. They bought that house 2 years ago, right after the fight with Aunt Claire. A notification popped up on her screen. Her father logging into the family banking app from his study. Sarah held her breath, quickly opening an incognito window. 2 years of computer science classes were about to pay off. She'd discovered the password pattern her father used months ago, back when she was looking for proof that they'd dipped into her college fund. 5 minutes later, she stared at the screen in shock. There weren't just 2 houses. There were accounts she'd never seen before, transactions that made no sense for a middle-class family, and most damning of all, a regular transfer to an account labeled J Education that was hemorrhaging money. $6,000 a month, she muttered. No wonder they need to sell. Jason's Ivy League dreams were expensive, and apparently her bedroom was the price. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Sarah quickly closed everything, switching back to her history essay as her mother passed by. Max's ears twitched, tracking the footsteps until they faded. Sarah reached for her phone, then stopped. Of course she couldn't call Aunt Claire. Her parents had made sure of that. But there were other ways to make contact in 2025. Ways her parents wouldn't think to block. She pulled up her rarely used LinkedIn profile and began to type. The next morning, Sarah stood in her parents' doorway, her heart pounding but her voice steady. We need to talk about my college fund. Her mother didn't look up from her phone, probably still messaging potential buyers. Her father continued, sipping his coffee, the newspaper creating a wall between them. It was Max who moved, padding over to sit beside her, his warm presence giving her strength. Now isn't a good time, Sarah, her mother said, that dismissive tone she'd perfected over years. We have another showing at 10. When is a good time? Sarah pressed. After you sell my room? After you pack up my life? That got their attention. Her father lowered his paper, exchanging a look with her mother that Sarah had seen too many times. The one that said they needed to manage her, contain her. Don't be dramatic, her father said. We're doing what's best for this family. Best? For Jason, you mean? The words escaped before she could stop them. $6,000 a month for his education. That's what you're sending him, right? The silence that followed was deafening. Her mother's phone slipped from her fingers onto the kitchen table. Her father's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. How did you? Her mother started, then caught herself. That's none of your business. None of my business? Sarah's laugh was hollow. What about my college fund? The one you promised was growing since I was born. The one you said would give me the same opportunities as Jason. Her father cleared his throat. Sarah, you need to understand. Understand what? That it's gone. That you spent it years ago. She pulled out her phone, showing them the old bank statements she'd found. Or should I understand that you never started one in the first place? That's enough. Her father's voice cracked like a whip. You had no right to go through our private financial information. Private? Like the house you bought 2 years ago, or the accounts you've been hiding. Her mother stood up so quickly. Her chair scraped against the floor. Max growled softly. Everything we've done has been for this family's future. Jason has real potential, and I don't. Sarah's voice broke. I'm in all AP classes. I'm on the debate team. I volunteer. I work part-time. What else did I need to do to deserve what you gave him? You're being selfish, her mother snapped. Jason is at Yale. Yale, do you know what that means for this family's reputation? And there it was. The truth she'd always known, but never wanted to believe. This family's reputation, Sarah repeated. Slowly. That's all that matters to you, isn't it? Not me, not what I want, not what I've earned. Her father stood now too, his face red. Go to your room. We're done discussing this. My room? Sarah's smile was bitter. You mean the one you're selling out from under me? The one you've already advertised as ready for renovation? That room? Don't you dare take that tone with us, her mother hissed. After everything we've done for you, done for me? Sarah's voice rose, like blocking Aunt Claire's number so I couldn't talk to the only person who ever really cared. About my future? Like lying to me for years about a college fund that never existed? Your Aunt Claire, her father spat the name, is a troublemaker who needs to mind her own business. She was right about you. Sarah's voice was quiet now, but steady. She tried to warn me, but I didn't want to believe her. I do now. Her parents stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. Maybe they were. Max pressed against her legs. A silent guardian as Sarah turned to leave. If you walk away from this conversation, her father called after her, there will be consequences. Sarah paused in the doorway but didn't turn around. Bigger consequences than selling my room while I still live in it? She walked away, Max at her heels, leaving her parents in a silence that felt like the calm before a storm. What they didn't know was that Sarah had recorded every word of their conversation on her phone, a habit she'd developed recently, one that would soon prove more valuable than any college fund they'd never started. The LinkedIn message from Aunt Claire arrived at midnight. I've been waiting for you to find me. Call this number tomorrow at 3 p.m. Use a library computer. Delete this message. Sarah sat in her school library the next afternoon, her hands trembling, as she dialed the number from a computer booth in the back corner. Max lay at her feet, his service dog vest ensuring no one questioned his presence in the school building. Sarah? Aunt Claire's voice was exactly as she remembered. Warm, strong, slightly husky. Oh, sweetheart, I've been so worried. The tears came then, silent but unstoppable. They're selling the house, Aunt Claire. They're selling my room. They spent everything on Jason, and now— I know, honey, I know. Her aunt's voice was gentle but firm. I've been watching your parents' real estate dealings ever since they forced me out. That's what the fight was about, you know. I found out what they were doing with your college fund, how they were channeling everything to Jason. I threatened to expose them, so they cut me off. Sarah wiped her eyes, glancing around to make sure no one was within earshot. Mrs. Henderson told me some of it. But Aunt Claire, there's more. I found their accounts, the hidden house. Keep your voice down, Claire cautioned. And Sarah, clear your browser history when you're done here. In fact, get one of those VPN things kids use nowadays. Your father might be checking. Already have one, Sarah confirmed. But what do I do? They're showing the house every day. Mom's talking about me like I'm already gone, and Dad, he said there would be consequences if I didn't fall in line. There was a pause on the other end. When Claire spoke again, her voice was different, harder, more determined. Listen carefully, Sarah. What they're doing, using your college fund, hiding assets, selling property out from under a minor, it's not just morally wrong. Some of it might be illegal, but proving that takes time you might not have. You have somewhere safe you can go. Sarah stroked Max's head, drawing comfort from his solid presence. I see, maybe. Mrs. Henderson would take me in, but they'd look there first. Good thinking. What about friends? They've isolated me pretty well over the years, Sarah said bitterly. Every time I got close to someone, they'd find a reason why. That friend was a bad influence, Of course they did, Claire muttered. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I have a place. Off the grid. Not connected to me on paper. It's about 3 hours from you. If you can get there, I can protect you. But Sarah, this has to be your decision. Once you start this, there's no going back. Sarah watched as a group of students passed by her booth, laughing about weekend plans and college applications. Normal kids with normal parents who wanted them to succeed. What choice do I have? They've already decided I don't exist. You always have a choice, Claire said firmly. But if you choose this path, we do it smart, we do it legally, and we do it in a way that ensures they can never hurt you again. Are you ready to hear the plan? Max's tail thumped against the carpet, and Sarah sat up straighter. Yes, tell me everything. For the next hour, aunt and niece talked strategy, contingencies, and timing. When Sarah finally hung up, she had a new email address, instructions for securing her important documents, and a growing sense of both terror and relief. As she cleared the browser history and gathered her things, a message popped up on her phone. Another showing scheduled for tomorrow, this time with a young family who was very interested. Sarah looked down at Max, who stared back with those knowing eyes. Time to start packing, boy, but not the way they think. The offer came faster than anyone expected. Sarah overheard the conversation from the top of the stairs, Max lying silently beside her as her parents' voices drifted up from the kitchen. Full asking price, her mother said, excitement making, her voice higher than usual. And they want to close in 2 weeks. Can you believe our luck? What about Sarah? Her father's voice was lower, concerned not for her welfare but for their plans. We haven't figured out where to put her yet. The casual cruelty of those words made Sarah's chest tight. Where to put her? Like a piece of furniture that didn't match the new decor. She'll have to figure something out, her mother replied dismissively. She's 17, practically an adult. Maybe she can stay with a friend until graduation, or we could send her to that boarding school in Vermont. The one that takes students mid-year. That's expensive, her father protested. We need every penny for Jason's tuition. Well, she can't come with us to the new house. It would ruin everything we've built for Jason's future. Besides, her mother added, that dog of hers would just mess up the new carpets. Max's ears twitched at the mention of himself, but he remained still as if he too were listening intently. Speaking of the dog, her father said, I called the shelter today. They said they can take him next week. They'll try to find him a new home, but at his age, Sarah's hand flew to her mouth to stifle her gasp. Max was only 6, but she knew what happened to older dogs in shelters. She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his fur as tears threatened to fall. Good, her mother said. That animal's been too protective of her lately anyway. Did you see how he growled at the buyers yesterday? We can't risk him ruining this sale. 2 weeks, her father mused. That's not much time to clear everything out. Oh, I've already called the donation center. They're coming Thursday to take whatever furniture we're not keeping. Sarah can pack a suitcase for boarding school, and the rest can go to charity. Thursday, 3 days away. Sarah's mind raced as she processed this information. They weren't just selling her room. They were erasing her entire existence, and Max... They were going to send Max to his death while she was at school, probably, to avoid a scene. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from Aunt Claire to her secret email account. Everything's ready here. Just say when. Sarah looked at Max, then down at her parents in the kitchen, efficiently planning the disposal of her life over glasses of expensive wine. Her decision crystallized in that moment. When she finally stood up, her legs were steady. She had 3 days to execute her plan. 3 days to save herself and Max. 3 days to disappear so completely that they'd never be able to hurt either of them again. She walked back to her room, Max padding silently beside her. On her desk, next to college brochures she now knew were just for show, sat the registration papers declaring Max as her official emotional support animal. Papers her parents had signed last year, without reading carefully, too busy planning. Jason's freshman orientation at Yale. Sarah smiled for the first time in days. They'd never noticed that those papers didn't just make Max her emotional support animal, they made her his legal owner, and she was taking her property with her. Sarah's phone became her silent weapon. With Max keeping watch at her door, she set up the old smartphone she'd kept after her last upgrade, positioning it carefully on her bookshelf. The camera faced her room at an angle that captured both her desk and the doorway. Perfect, she whispered to Max, checking the feed on her current phone. The hidden camera app was working flawlessly, motion detection activated. Every time someone entered her room, she'd know. She hadn't slept much since overhearing her parents' plans, but exhaustion had given way to a strange, sharp clarity. Each revelation of their betrayal had built a fortress around her heart, replacing hurt with determination. The camera caught its first footage that afternoon, her mother slipping in while Sarah was supposedly at debate practice. Instead, Sarah sat in her car in the school parking lot, watching the live feed as her mother methodically went through her dresser drawers, her desk, her nightstand. "Looking for something, Mum?" Sarah muttered, recording the footage. Max, in the passenger seat beside her, tilted his head at her voice. The next clip came 2 hours later. Her father, using a letter opener to pry up the loose floorboard where Sarah had once kept her diary. His face fell when he found it empty. She'd cleared out her hiding spots days ago. The most damning footage came that night. Sarah lay in bed pretending to sleep as her parents crept in. Max, usually alert to any nighttime intrusion, followed her cue and remained still, though his eyes tracked every movement. "Her passport has to be here somewhere," her mother whispered, rifling through Sarah's private box of keepsakes. "We can't risk her trying to go to Claire." "Check her school bag," her father suggested, already pulling books from her backpack. Sarah watched through barely open eyes as they systematically violated every remaining boundary she had. When they finally left, frustrated and empty-handed, she waited 10 minutes before silently sliding out of bed. "Come on, Max," she whispered. "Time for phase 2. In the dim light of her desk lamp, Sarah pulled out her real backpack, the one hidden in Mrs. Henderson's garage. Her passport was there, along with her birth certificate, social security card, and the USB drive containing copies of every incriminating photo, video, and document she'd collected. Her laptop glowed softly as she typed out 3 emails, scheduling them for delivery in precisely 48 hours. One to her school counselor, detailing her parents' financial manipulation and emotional abuse with video attachments. One to Jason at Yale, showing him exactly how his dream education was being funded. Let him live with that knowledge. And one to the local police department, documenting her parents' attempts to dispose of her legal property, including Max, and their financial irregularities. Aunt Claire's lawyer had helped her word it perfectly. "I'm not running away," she typed in each message. "I'm escaping abuse, and I have proof." A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Sarah quickly closed her laptop as footsteps approached. Max's low growl was all the warning she needed. Her mother opened the door without knocking, as always. "Sarah, why are you still up?" "Just finishing homework," Sarah said, gesturing to the calculus book open on her desk. "Big test tomorrow." Her mother's eyes scanned the room, looking for anything out of place. Finding nothing obvious, she seemed to deflate slightly. "Well, don't stay up too late, and we need to talk tomorrow about some changes that are coming." Sarah met her mother's eyes, letting none of her knowledge show. "Of course, Mom. Whatever you think is best for the family." After her mother left, Sarah leaned down to scratch Max's ears. "Just one more day, boy," she whispered. "One more day of pretending, and then we'll never have to pretend again." In the darkness of her soon-to-be-sold room, Sarah reviewed her mental checklist one final time. Everything was in place. The only question now was, would her parents discover her plan before she could execute it? Max's steady breathing beside her bed was her answer. They had underestimated her for 17 years. They wouldn't see her coming now either. Dinner that night was an exercise in self-control. Sarah sat at her usual place, pushing food around her plate, hyper-aware of every glance her parents exchanged. Max lay under the table at her feet, his warm presence the only thing keeping her hands from shaking. "Sarah," her mother began, setting down her fork with practiced precision, "your father and I have been thinking about your future." Here it comes, Sarah thought, the speech they'd probably rehearsed all day. "We've found an excellent boarding school in Vermont," her father continued, not looking up from his plate. "Very prestigious. They're willing to take you mid-semester." Sarah took a careful sip of water. "That sounds expensive." Another loaded glance between her parents. "We've made arrangements," her mother said smoothly. "It's what's best for everyone." "Everyone?" Sarah kept her voice neutral. "Or just Jason?" Her father's fork clattered against his plate. "This attitude of yours needs to stop. We're trying to provide opportunities, like the opportunity to have my room sold without my knowledge." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "Or the opportunity to have my college fund drained for Jason's tuition." "Enough." Her father's fist hit the table, making the glasses jump. Max let out a warning growl. "That dog needs to learn his place." "He knows his place," Sarah said quietly, "right by my side, where he's legally required to be, as my registered emotional support animal." Her mother's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" Sarah pulled out her phone, displaying the registration documents. "Remember these? You signed them last year." "Too busy planning Jason's move to Yale to read them properly, I guess." This doesn't mean anything," her father sputtered. "We're your parents. We can decide—" "Actually, you can't." Sarah's voice was steady now. "I checked with a lawyer. Max is legally my property. Sending him to a shelter without my consent would be theft." The silence that followed was deafening. Her mother's careful mask cracked, showing the fury beneath. "You spoke to a lawyer?" "I spoke to several people." Sarah stood up, Max rising with her. "People who are very interested in how you've been handling my college fund, and Jason's tuition, and the house you bought 2 years ago under a shell company." Her father stood so quickly his chair fell backward. "You're lying. You're trying to manipulate us, like you manipulated Aunt Claire, forced her out when she discovered what you were doing." Sarah backed toward the door, Max positioning himself between her and her parents. "I have proof of everything. Every conversation, every transaction, every lie. You ungrateful little—" Her father started forward, but Max's growl stopped him. Cold. "I'm going to my room now," Sarah announced. "My actual room, not the one you're selling, and tomorrow I'm going to school, just like normal." She met her mother's eyes. "Because that's what this family's all about, right? Keeping up appearances?" She turned and walked out, maintaining her composure until she reached her room. Only then did she allow herself to shake, sliding down against the closed door as Maxie pressed against her, offering silent comfort. Her phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Claire to her secret number. "Everything's set for tomorrow. Are you sure you're ready?" Sarah looked around her room, at the walls her parents had painted over, the boxes they'd started packing, the life they were trying to erase. Then she looked at Max, her guardian, her protector, the one being in this house who had never betrayed her. "Yes," she typed back, "we're ready." She didn't sleep that night, listening to her parents arguing in hushed, angry voices downstairs. They were probably calling lawyers, checking accounts, trying to figure out how their perfect plan had started to unravel. Let them scramble. By this time tomorrow, she would be gone, but not without leaving them a parting gift. The truth, in all its ugly glory, exposed to everyone who needed to see it. Morning arrived with an artificial calm. Sarah went through her usual routine with mechanical precision, aware of her parents' eyes tracking her every move. They were trying to appear normal, too, her mother sipping coffee at the kitchen island, her father reading news on his tablet. "Don't forget, I have debate practice after school," Sarah said, slinging her backpack over her shoulder. The lie felt bitter on her tongue, but necessary. "I'll be home late." Her mother's smile was tight. "Actually, honey, I think you should come straight home today. We need to discuss the boarding school arrangements." "Can't," Sarah replied, clipping Max's leash to his service vest. "We're preparing for state finals. Can't miss it." "Sarah." Her father's voice held a warning. "This isn't a request." She paused at the door, allowing herself one last look at them. These strangers who had raised her, who had taught her through, their betrayal that blood wasn't always thicker than water. "I know it's not a request," she said softly. "It never is with you two." She left before they could respond, Max trotting faithfully beside her. Her real backpack, the one with everything she needed, was already in her car's trunk, hidden under a blanket. The one on her shoulder was filled with textbooks she'd never use again. The drive to school felt surreal. Sarah parked in her usual spot but didn't get out. Instead, she pulled out her phone and opened her email. The 3 scheduled messages she'd prepared to her counselor, to Jason, to the police, were set to send in exactly 6 hours. A new message from Aunt Claire popped up. "Remember, stick to the plan. Don't let them suspect anything's wrong." Sarah's hands trembled as she replied, "They already know something's wrong, but they don't know what." Her phone buzzed again. Her mother. "I've called the school. You don't have debate practice today. Come home immediately." Then her father. "This behavior stops now. Home now." Sarah turned off her phone and looked at Max. "Ready for an adventure, boy?" Max's tail wagged once, his eyes fixed on her with absolute trust. She pulled out of the parking lot, heading not toward home, but toward the highway. In her trunk were her important documents, some clothes, her laptop, and Max's favorite toys. In her wallet was a debit card linked to a new account Aunt Claire had helped her set up, one her parents couldn't access or trace, and in her heart was a strange mixture of grief and freedom. She wasn't just leaving a house, she was leaving a life built on lies, a family that had tried to erase her, and a future others had tried to write for her. The highway stretched ahead, empty and promising. Sarah merged into traffic, adjusting her mirrors until the familiar landmarks of her hometown disappeared. "They'll figure it out soon," she told Max, who had moved to the front seat, his head held high as he watched the world speed past. "When I don't come home, when they're carefully planned lives start falling apart." She imagined the scene, her mother calling the school in a panic, her father discovering her empty room, the delayed emails arriving like digital time bombs. By then, she'd be 3 hours away, safe with Aunt Claire, beyond their reach. The sun climbed higher in the sky as Sarah drove, carrying her toward a future she was finally choosing for herself. She didn't know exactly what that future looked like yet, but she knew one thing for certain: it would be honest. It would be hers. And Max would be by her side every step of the way. 2 hours into the drive, Sarah's burner phone, the one Aunt Claire had sent her, buzzed with a message. "They've called the police. Don't panic. Everything's proceeding as expected." Sarah gripped the steering wheel tighter, checking her rear view mirror for the 100th time. Max sensed her tension, pressing closer against her side. "We're okay," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "We've done nothing wrong." Her regular phone, turned off and buried at the bottom of her bag, held the evidence that would prove exactly that. The recordings, the documents, the photos, everything that showed how her parents had systematically stripped away her future to build Jason's. Right on schedule, the first delayed email would be hitting her school counselor's inbox. Mrs. Rodriguez would be reading it now, discovering how the bright student she'd helped fill out college applications had no funding to actually attend any of them. The second email, to Jason, would land during his afternoon economics seminar at Yale. Let him learn the true cost of his Ivy League dreams while sitting in the classroom they were paid for with her stolen future. And the third, the one to the police, would arrive just as her parents were filing their missing persons report. The irony was almost poetic. A highway sign announced a rest stop ahead. Sarah pulled in, her legs shaky as she got out to fill the gas tank. Max stayed close, his body alert, watching every stranger who passed by. "Need anything else, sweetie?" An elderly woman at the next pump smiled at her. "That's a beautiful dog you have." "He's my guardian angel," Sarah replied, surprising herself with the crack in her voice. The woman's eyes softened with concern. "Are you okay, dear? You seem—" "I'm fine," Sarah said quickly. "Just tired from driving. Where are you headed? Home?" Sarah answered, and for the first time in years it wasn't a lie. Home wasn't the house her parents were selling or the rooms they were erasing. Home was wherever she and Max could be safe, be honest, be themselves. Back in the car, her burner phone buzzed again. A message from Mrs. Henderson this time. "They're here, searching your room. Your mother's crying for the cameras, your father's threatening legal action. But don't worry, I gave the police a very interesting statement about what I've witnessed over the years." Sarah's hands trembled as she typed back, "Thank you for everything. Just stay safe, dear. And Sarah, I'm proud of you." Those 4 words, so simple, so genuine, so foreign coming from an adult in her life, made tears blur her vision. Max whined softly, licking her cheek. "We're almost there," she told him, wiping her eyes. "Almost to Aunt Claire's." But as she pulled back onto the highway, a new message from Claire made her heart skip. "Change of plans. Your father's hired. A private investigator. He's looking into my properties. Head to the backup location, sending coordinates now." Sarah took the next exit, her mind racing. They'd prepared for this possibility, but the reality of it still shook her. Her parents were really doing it. Throwing money they claimed not to have at private investigators, probably lawyers too, all to maintain control of the daughter they'd planned to ship away. The coordinates led to a small town she'd never heard of, in the opposite direction from Claire's known properties. Smart. Claire had always been smart. That's probably why her parents had seen her as such a threat. As Sarah drove, the sun began to set, painting the sky in colors she'd never appreciated before. Each mile marked another step toward freedom, but also another reminder of what she was leaving behind. Her phone, the burner, chimed with an incoming news alert. Local news from her hometown. The headline made her pull over abruptly. Local honor student missing, parents fear abduction. Below was a photo of her, smiling at last year's debate championship. Next to it, her mother's tear-streaked face as she begged for her precious daughter's safe return. Her father, looking appropriately stern and worried, announced a reward for information. Sarah's laugh held no humor. "Smile for the cameras, Mom," she muttered. "You always did know how to put on a show." Max barked once, as if in agreement, and Sarah scratched his ears. "Don't worry, boy, the truth's already out there, they just don't know it yet." The backup location turned out to be a small cottage on the outskirts of a lakeside town, its existence carefully hidden under layers of LLC paperwork. Sarah pulled up just as full darkness settled, her headlights illuminating a sturdy wooden porch where Aunt Claire stood waiting. "You made it," Claire breathed, pulling Sarah into a fierce hug. Max danced around them, tail wagging as he recognized Claire from video calls. "Come inside quickly. We need to talk." The cottage was warm, filled with the smell of coffee and something baking. Sarah sank into a kitchen chair, her legs finally giving out as the adrenaline of the day faded. Max settled at her feet, ever vigilant. "Your brother called me," Claire said, setting a mug of hot chocolate in front of Sarah. "After he got your email. He didn't know, Sarah, about any of it." Sarah wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "And now? Now he's asking a lot of questions about the money, about why his trust fund is so much larger than yours, about why he never noticed you didn't come to his graduation." "Because he never looked," Sarah said quietly. "None of them did." Claire sat down across from her, her face grave. "The police called too. They've seen your evidence. All of it. Your parents are, well, they're not handling it well." Sarah's phone, the burner, lit up with a news notification. She read it aloud, her voice shaking. "Local couple under investigation for financial fraud, following daughter's disappearance." "That's not all," Claire said, pulling out her laptop. "Your school counselor went public with everything. The local news is running a story about academic discrimination and financial abuse. Your debate team is organizing a protest, and Mrs. Henderson, bless that woman, gave an interview about witnessing years of emotional manipulation. They'll try to spin it," Sarah whispered. "They always do. Not this time." Claire's voice was firm. "The evidence is too clear, the paper trail too detailed, and Jason's withdrawn from Yale. Says he can't stay there knowing how it was paid for." Sarah looked up sharply. "He what? Turns out your brother has more conscience than your parents. He's transferred to a state school, says he'll pay his own way." Claire's smile was sad. Sometimes the truth sets more than one person free. A crack of thunder made them both jump. Rain began to patter against the windows as the storm that had been threatening all day finally broke. Max moved closer to Sarah, laying his head in her lap. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, suddenly feeling very young and very tired. "Now," Claire reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Now you rest. You're safe here. Tomorrow we'll meet with my lawyer. She's already filing for emergency emancipation, given the evidence of financial abuse. And after that, well, that's up to you." "Up to me," Sarah repeated, tasting the words. "I don't think anything's ever been up to me before." "Get used to it," Claire said softly. "You're not just free of that house, Sarah. You're free of their expectations, their limitations, their lies. You can be whoever you want to be now." Another news alert buzzed. Her father's company had launched an internal investigation into his accounts. The carefully constructed facade was crumbling brick by brick. "They'll try to find me," Sarah said. But there was no fear in her voice now, just certainty. "Let them try." Claire's eyes flashed. "They'll have to go through me first. And unlike last time, I'm ready for them." Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cottage, Sarah felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Max dozed at her feet. Claire worked on her laptop, and the future, uncertain but finally her own, waited like a blank page, ready to be written. The morning headlines painted a picture Sarah had never imagined seeing. Her father being escorted from his office building, her mother's tearful press conference dissolving into accusations as reporters asked about the missing college fund, and Jason, serious, perfect Jason, standing on Yale's campus announcing his immediate withdrawal. "Your brother wants to talk to you," Claire said, setting a plate of toast in front of Sarah. Max lay in a patch of sunlight, but his ears perked up at the sound of movement outside. "He's been texting me all morning. Says he'll meet us anywhere. Any time on your terms. Sarah stared at her untouched breakfast. I'm not ready. No one says you have to be. Claire sat down beside her, sliding over a stack of papers. But you should see these. The emancipation paperwork is already in motion. Judge Matthews, an old friend of mine, has agreed to hear the case immediately given the circumstances. Sarah flipped through the documents, her eyes catching phrases like financial abuse and emotional manipulation, and willful neglect of educational obligations. Her whole life reduced to legal terminology. There's more, Claire continued, her voice gentle but firm. The police want to interview you about the financial records you uncovered. Apparently your parents' scheme went beyond just your college fund. They're finding irregularities going back years. A harsh laugh escaped Sarah's throat. Let me guess, all funneled toward Jason's future? Not exactly. Claire pulled up an email on her laptop. According to this, they were building a whole separate life. The house they bought 2 years ago. It's part of a larger property portfolio. They were planning to sell your house, send you away, and disappear with the money. Jason's tuition was just their cover story. The toast turned to ash in Sarah's mouth. They were going to abandon both of us. In their own ways, yes. Jason with his expensive education but no real support system. You, Claire's voice cracked slightly. You, they were planning to discard entirely. Max sensed Sarah's distress. Padding over to rest his head on her knee, she buried her fingers in his fur, anchoring herself in the present. Mrs. Henderson sent something for you, Claire said after a moment, sliding over an envelope. She found it while the police were searching the house. Inside was a photograph Sarah had never seen before, herself at about age 5, sitting on the front porch with a much younger Max, both of them beaming at the camera. On the back, in Mrs. Henderson's shaky handwriting, the day they found each other. Some souls are meant to be guardians. Sarah traced the edge of the photo, remembering that day. Max had been a rescue, unwanted by his previous owners, deemed too protective, too loyal, too much. Just like her, the shelter called your parents that day, Mrs. Henderson had written in an accompanying note. Told them Max wasn't a good fit for a family with children. Your mother was ready to take him back, but you looked that shelter worker in the eye and said, he's protecting me. That's what family does. Even then, you knew what they didn't. A notification popped up on Claire's laptop. Another news update. Sarah's father had been suspended pending investigation. Her mother had checked into a private hospital, citing emotional distress. And Jason, Yale University, has launched an internal investigation into the source of tuition payments for over 24 students, Sarah read aloud. Following allegations of financial misconduct revealed by the Winters case. Your parents weren't just stealing your future, Claire said quietly. They were part of a larger scheme, multiple families, multiple children, all being manipulated and defrauded. You exposed something much bigger than just your own story, Sarah. Looked down at Max, then at the photograph of their first day together. Some souls are meant to be guardians, she repeated softly. Yes, Claire agreed, wrapping an arm around her niece's shoulders. And sometimes the ones we're meant to protect turn out to be ourselves. Outside, reporters had begun gathering at the end of the private road, held back by local police who supported Claire's request for privacy. But for once, Sarah didn't feel the need to hide. She had spent 17 years being invisible in plain sight. Now finally the truth was doing what truth does best, setting everything into the light. The legal proceedings moved with unexpected speed, driven by the mountain of evidence Sarah had collected and the public attention the case had attracted. She sat in Judge Matthews' chambers, Max at her feet, as 17 years of systematic manipulation were laid bare in clinical legal terms. The evidence of premeditated financial fraud is overwhelming, the judge said, reviewing the documents spread across her desk. But what concerns me more is the pattern of emotional abuse and abandonment planning we've uncovered. Sarah's new lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Ms. Chen, who specialized in cases of financial exploitation, nodded grimly. The emails we recovered show a clear timeline. They began liquidating Sarah's assets the day her brother received his Yale acceptance letter. And the other families? Sarah asked quietly. It still shocked her to know she wasn't alone. 12 cases confirmed so far, Ms. Chen replied. All following the same pattern, one child elevated at the expense of another, complex financial schemes. to hide the money transfers, and plans to ultimately abandon both children once the funds were secured. Judge Matthews removed her glasses, fixing Sarah with a kind but serious look. Your decision to document everything probably saved more than just yourself, Ms. Winters. You've exposed a network of fraud that spans several states. Max shifted closer to Sarah as she absorbed this information. Her small acts of self-preservation, the hidden camera, the recorded conversations, the saved documents, had created a domino effect she never imagined. Your parents' assets have been frozen, Ms. Chen continued. The house sale has been halted, pending investigation. And your brother is here, a voice said from the doorway. Sarah turned to see Jason standing there, looking somehow both older and younger than she remembered. Gone was the confident Yale student. In his place stood a brother finally seeing his sister clearly for the first time. Max's tail thumped once against the floor. He had always liked Jason, even when Sarah resented him. May I? Jason gestured to the empty chair beside Sarah. Judge. Matthews nodded, and Jason sat down, his shoulders tight with tension. I've given statements to the FBI about everything I knew, and everything I should have known but ignored. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I was so caught up in my own future that I never questioned why yours seemed to be disappearing. Mr. Winters has been extremely cooperative, Ms. Chen noted. His decision to withdraw from Yale and return his tuition payments has helped establish the pattern of fraud. I can't keep what was stolen from you, Jason said simply. I've transferred to state, got a job at the campus bookstore, going to do it right this time. Sarah studied her brother's face, seeing not the golden child their parents had created, but someone who was, in his own way, also breaking free from their web of lies. What happens now? She asked, directing the question to no one in particular. Judge Matthews picked up a document from her desk. First, we formalize your emancipation. The evidence more than supports it. Then, we begin the process of recovering your stolen assets. Ms. Chen has already identified several accounts where your college fund was hidden. And Max, Sarah's hand tightened in her dog's fur. The judge smiled. Your emotional support animal registration is ironclad. He goes where you go. Which is where exactly? Jason asked softly. I know you can't come home, but she has a home. Claire spoke up from her position by the window. With me, permanently if she wants it. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes, not of sadness this time, but of possibility. I want to finish school, she said, and then college, a real college, one I choose for myself. You'll have the means to do so, Ms. Chen assured her. Once we've recovered your funds and settled the civil suits, you'll have options. Options. Such a simple word for such an overwhelming concept. And our parents? Jason asked, his voice tight. Judge Matthews' face hardened slightly. They'll face the consequences of their actions, both legal and personal. The FBI is particularly interested in how many other families might have been involved in their scheme. Sarah looked down at Max, then at Jason, then at Claire. A guard dog who had become her protector, a brother who had chosen truth over privilege, an aunt who had never stopped fighting for her. Maybe family wasn't what she had always thought it was. I want to help the other families, she said suddenly. The other kids like me. They deserve to know they're not alone. Judge Matthews smiled. I think, Ms. Winters, you already have. 3 months after Sarah left her old life behind, she stood in front of a room full of strangers who felt oddly like family. The support group, started by Mrs. Henderson of all people, had grown from just the local victims of her parents' scheme to include dozens of young people who'd experienced similar betrayals. My name is Sarah, she began, Max a steady presence beside her, and like many of you, I thought I was alone until I wasn't. The faces looking back at her held different versions of her own story. The girl whose parents had drained her inheritance to fund her brother's business ventures, the boy whose college savings had disappeared into his sister's professional sports training, twins who'd discovered only one of them had a future their parents deemed worth investing in. They tried to make us invisible, Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. They tried to convince us that we were worth less than our siblings, that our dreams mattered less, that our futures were acceptable collateral damage for someone else's success. A murmur of recognition rippled through the room. In the back, Jason sat with other siblings who'd chosen truth over privilege, their own healing journey running parallel to their brothers and sisters. But here's what they didn't count on, Sarah said, reaching down to scratch Max's ears. They didn't expect us to protect ourselves. They didn't expect us to find each other, and they certainly didn't expect us to fight back. The investigation had expanded far beyond her parents now. The FBI had uncovered a network of financial advisors, private school administrators, and corrupt college finance officers who had helped facilitate similar schemes across the country. Sarah's evidence had been the key that unlocked it all. "My parents are facing federal charges," she told the room. "So are many of yours. But that's not why we're here today. We're here because every one of us deserves to reclaim our story, our future, and our sense of family." In the front row, Claire wiped away tears, sitting next to Mrs. Henderson, who had become something of a grandmother figure to many of the group's younger members. "They tried to sell my room while I still lived in it," Sarah said, her voice catching slightly. "But what they really tried to sell was my right to exist, my right to dream, my right to be more than just collateral damage in someone else's story." Max pressed against her legs, offering silent support as always. "So here's what we're going to do," she continued, pulling out a stack of papers. "Thanks to the settlement funds and donations from concerned community members, we've established a scholarship foundation, not just for college, for therapy, for legal aid, for whatever you need to rebuild the future they tried to steal." A room erupted in surprised murmurs as she explained the details, how Claire had helped structure it, how recovered funds from the fraud cases would help sustain it, how every person in this room would have a chance to reclaim their path. "But more than money," Sarah said, raising her voice slightly, "we're offering something they tried to take from all of us: community, support, the knowledge that you're not invisible, not less than, not alone." A young girl in the front row raised her hand, her voice trembling. "Did it get easier after you left?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "It got different. Some days are harder than others, but every morning I wake up knowing that my life is my own now, that the choices I make are really mine, and that the family I've found," she gestured to the room, to Claire, to Mrs. Henderson, to Max, even to Jason, "is stronger than the one I left behind because we chose each other." As the meeting transitioned into smaller support groups, Sarah watched the connections forming. Siblings reconnecting without their parents' toxic influence, new friendships blooming from shared understanding, healing beginning in the simple act of being seen and heard. "You did good, kid," Claire said, coming to stand beside her. "Really good." Sarah leaned against her aunt, watching as Max made his rounds through the room, offering his own brand of comfort to those who needed it most. "We did good," she corrected. "All of us." In her pocket, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Another family had come forward, another scheme uncovered, another child finding their voice. The ripples of truth continued to spread, and Sarah knew that somewhere, in another room like this one, another young person was realizing they weren't alone. The courtroom was silent as Sarah's mother was led away in handcuffs, her carefully maintained facade finally cracking. Her father had been sentenced the week before, 8 years for fraud, with additional charges still pending. But it was her mother's sentence that felt more significant somehow. 12 years for orchestrating the scheme that had affected so many families. "She still doesn't understand what she did wrong," Jason muttered from his seat beside Sarah. "Did you see her face when they read the victim impact statements?" Sarah nodded, remembering how their mother had flinched at every mention of emotional abuse, but remained unmoved by the financial crimes. Even now, she was more concerned with appearances than accountability. Max, wearing his service vest, lay quietly under Sarah's seat. He'd been allowed in the courtroom as her emotional support animal, a status that had taken on new meaning during these proceedings. "The house sold," Jason continued, his voice low as they waited for the courtroom to clear, for way less than they wanted, obviously, given everything that happened. But after the restitution payments and legal fees— "I don't want any of it," Sarah interrupted. "Whatever's left should go to the foundation. Help other kids like us." Her brother nodded, understanding. He'd already donated his remaining trust fund to the cause, choosing to make his own way through state college with student loans and part-time work. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. But Sarah had learned to face them with grace. Her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every child who'd been sacrificed for someone else's dreams. "Ms. Winters," they called out, "how do you feel about the sentence?" Sarah paused, Max at her side, Jason and Claire flanking her. Protectively, Justice isn't just about punishment, she said carefully. It's about recognition. Today the court recognized that children aren't property to be invested or divested. We're people, with our own rights, our own dreams, and our own voices. And the other cases? Another reporter pressed. The FBI says there could be hundreds. More families involved. Then we'll find them, Sarah replied simply. We'll help them and we'll make sure this never happens again. Later that evening, in the safety of Claire's cottage, her home now, legally and emotionally, Sarah sat on the porch swing with Max's head in her lap. The spring air was warm, carrying the scent of Claire's garden and the promise of new beginnings. "Gotti, something for you," Claire said, coming outside with an envelope. "Your new school transcripts came in. Perfect grades, glowing recommendations. Any college would be lucky to have you." Sarah took the envelope but didn't open it yet. "I never thought I'd get here," she admitted. "There were so many times I almost gave up, almost accepted what they wanted for me. But you didn't," Claire reminded her, sitting down beside her. "You fought back, you protected yourself, and Max protected me," Sarah finished, scratching her faithful guardian's ears. "Even when I didn't know I needed protecting." The sun was setting over the lake, painting the sky in colors that reminded Sarah of endings and beginnings all at once. Her phone buzzed with messages from the support group, kids sharing triumphs and setbacks, siblings reconnecting, families healing in new and better ways. "You know," Claire said thoughtfully, "when I bought this cottage, I thought it would be my escape. Somewhere to hide from what your parents had done to all of us. I never imagined it would become a beginning instead of an ending." Sarah smiled, understanding completely. Sometimes the best futures came from the ashes of abandoned plans. Sometimes the truest family was the one you found after losing the one you were born into. And sometimes, she thought as Max sighed contentedly in her lap, the best guardians came with 4 paws and unconditional love. "We're going to be okay," she said, and for the first time in her life, she completely believed. Yes, Claire agreed, wrapping an arm around her niece's shoulders. "We already are." 1 year to the day after Sarah had driven away from her old life, she stood in front of her childhood home for the last time. The for sale sign was gone, replaced by a new one. Future site of the Guardian Center, a safe haven for youth in Tse. "Crisis? Are you sure about this?" Jason asked, standing beside her. "We could still sell it, split the money." Sarah shook her head, watching as Max explored the overgrown garden where she'd once played. "This feels right. Taking a place of pain and turning it into something healing. The foundation had grown beyond anything they'd imagined. What started as a support group in Mrs. Henderson's living room had evolved into a national network of advocacy and aid. The Guardian Center would be their first physical location, a place where young people could find legal help, counseling, and most importantly, hope. "Mrs. Henderson's already volunteered to run the library," Claire said, joining them with a stack of blueprints. "And Jason, your idea about the computer lab for kids to track their own finances, I learned from the best," he said, bumping Sarah's shoulder gently. "My sister taught me that knowledge is protection." Sarah smiled, remembering the hidden camera, the saved documents, the careful trail of evidence she'd left. "Knowledge and love," she corrected, watching Max bound back to her side. "Sometimes they're the same thing." Inside, the house was being gutted. Her old room, the one her parents had tried to sell while she still lived in it, would become a counseling center. Jason's former trophy room was being converted into a legal aid office. Every space that had once held secrets and lies would now hold truth and healing. "The contractor found something behind your old wall," Claire mentioned, pulling an envelope from her bag. "Must have fallen behind the baseboards years ago." Sarah opened it carefully. Inside was a child's drawing, a little girl and a dog standing in front of a house. On the back, in her wobbly 6-year-old handwriting, "My future family, me and my guard dog." "You always knew, didn't you?" Jason said softly. "Even back then you knew what family was supposed to feel like." Sarah tucked the drawing into her pocket, feeling its weight like a bridge between past and future. "I forgot for a while. They made me forget. But Max reminded you," Claire finished. "Just like you're reminding others now." They walked through the house together, their footsteps echoing in spaces that would soon be filled with new voices, new stories, new beginnings. The support group members had helped design every room, ensuring that each space would feel safe and welcoming, to kids who had never felt safe or welcome in their own homes. The first residents arrive next month, Claire said, consulting her notebook. 3 siblings from Boston whose parents tried to pull the same scheme. A teenager from Chicago whose college fund vanished. A young artist whose parents— "They'll be okay," Sarah interrupted gently. "We'll make sure of it." Jason nodded, his face serious. "Like you made sure of me." Sarah turned to her brother, seeing not the golden child their parents had tried to create, but the man who had chosen to rebuild himself from truth rather than privilege. "We made sure of each other." Outside, the sun was setting behind the house that had once been her prison and would soon be others' sanctuary. Max sat at attention, watching a group of birds in the old oak tree, still guarding, still protecting, but now with joy rather than fear. "You know what Mom said at the sentencing?" Jason asked suddenly. "I just wanted the best for my children. She still doesn't understand that her definition of best was what destroyed us." "No," Sarah agreed, reaching down to scratch Max's ears. "The best isn't about money or status or keeping up appearances. It's about being seen, being heard, being loved for exactly who you are." A car pulled up in the driveway, Mrs. Henderson, arriving for the evening support group meeting. They still held them regularly, even as the foundation grew, because some healing could only happen in small circles of shared understanding. "Ready?" Claire asked, holding the door open. Sarah took one last look at the house that had shaped her story but no longer defined it. "Ready," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The autumn breeze rustled through the new garden of the Guardian Center as Sarah walked the grounds with Max, now grey around the muzzle, but still every inch her protector. 2 years had passed since she'd first discovered the "for sale" sign in her room, and life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. "Sarah," a young voice called out, "can you help me with something?" She turned to see Emma, one of their newest residents, hurrying toward her with a laptop clutched to her chest. At 14, she reminded Sarah so much of herself, smart, determined, and finally learning that she deserved to take up space in the world. "My parents are trying to access my savings account," Emma explained, her voice trembling slightly, "like yours did." Sarah led her to a bench in the garden, Max automatically positioning himself at Emma's feet. "Show me," she said gently, as she helped Emma set up the same kind of financial safeguards she'd once created for herself. Sarah caught glimpses of movement through the center's windows. Jason teaching a financial literacy class in what had once been their father's study, Claire conferring with lawyers in the converted dining room, Mrs. Henderson in the library, helping another young resident research their rights. "There," Sarah said, finishing the last security setup. "Now you'll know if anyone tries to access your accounts, but Emma, you're not alone anymore. You don't have to protect yourself by yourself." The girl's eyes filled with tears. "I keep waiting to wake up," she admitted. "To be back in my old life. Invisible again." "Look at me," Sarah said softly. "Really look. 2 years ago, I was sitting in my room, watching my mother show it to strangers while I was still living in it. I thought I was alone too, but I wasn't. None of us are." Emma glanced at Max, who had shifted to press against her legs. "Is that why you started the center, to find other people like you?" "No," Sarah smiled. "I started it to help other people find themselves." Later that evening, after the day's sessions had ended and the residents had retired to their rooms, Sarah sat in her office, once her childhood bedroom, reviewing applications for the center's college scholarship program. Each story was different, but the thread of hope ran through them all. A knock at her door revealed Jason, looking tired but content after his evening class. "Good day," he asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. "The best kind," she replied. Emma caught her. "Parents trying to drain her accounts, but this time she knew what to look for," Jason finished. "Because of you." Sarah shook her head. "Because of us. All of us." She gestured to the framed photo on her wall, the support group's first meeting in Mrs. Henderson's living room. "We all helped build this. Mum's up for parole next month," Jason said quietly. "Dad the month after." Sarah nodded, unsurprised. She'd been tracking their cases, not out of lingering attachment, but to ensure they couldn't hurt anyone else. "They won't find us here," she said confidently. "We're not their children anymore. We're our own people. With our own chosen family," Jason agreed, reaching down to pat Max, who had dozed off under Sarah's desk. As if on cue, Claire appeared in the doorway, holding up a stack of papers. The last of the paperwork came through. The Guardian Center is officially recognized as a national advocacy organization. We can start opening branches in other states. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. How many kids do you think are out there? Like us? Too many, Claire said softly. But now they have somewhere to go, someone to believe them, someone to show them what real family looks like. Max stirred, lifting his head to look at Sarah with eyes that held the same unwavering love they'd shown on that first day at the shelter. She thought about that scared, lonely girl she'd been, sitting in a room her parents were selling out from under her. She thought about all the other scared, lonely children out there, waiting to be found, waiting to be saved, waiting to learn that they deserved to be protected. You know what Mrs. Henderson always says? Sarah smiled, reaching down to scratch Max's ears. Some souls are meant to be guardians. I used to think she was just talking about Max, but now I know. She was talking about all of us. Every person who finds their way here, who learns to stand up, speak out, and protect not just themselves but others. From a single room to a national movement, Jason mused. Not bad for a girl whose parents tried to erase her. Sarah looked around her office at the walls that once held her prisoner and now held her purpose. They didn't erase me, she said firmly. They just showed me who I really am. A guardian, a protector, a voice for those who haven't found theirs yet. Max thumped his tail in agreement and Sarah smiled. Some families you're born into, some you find along the way, and some, the most precious kind, you build yourself, one saved soul at a time.